Hello, I'm Zoe PNG and welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Grabie alcohol marker that they sent me. I have two sets here today. I have the 48 vibrant color set and the 36 skin tone set. Before I start, I just want to swatch these markers to make sure I know what the colors look like on this paper I'm using, because sometimes these colors can vary from the cap color. I organized the swatches here by tone and hue rather than the numbers and letters on the caps because I felt like it was a bit more organized for my liking. So I'm going to be comparing these markers to other alcohol markers I've used in the past. I have a set of Ohuhu markers and I've also used some Copic markers. I know that these two brands are some of the more popular alcohol markers on the market at the moment, so I'm excited to see how these compare. I find that the Grabie 48 vibrant color set is very similar to my Ohuhu set. They have a lot of the same colors. Even though the Grabie set is smaller, I feel like it's a bit more versatile. And one thing I dislike about my older Ohuhu set is that they are chiseled and point nib, whereas the Grabie markers are a brush nib and are much more easy to use and blend with. So I finished my swatching and I'm really happy with all of these colors. I think they turned out really well and I'm really enjoying the 48 vibrant color set. I think it's amazing. Again, it's really important for me to swatch the colors because the caps don't always match the color and it's really difficult to understand what color you're putting down if you're just going off of the cap. Moving on to the skin tone set, I think it's good, however it's definitely lacking in the darker hues. I feel like there's a huge gap between the mid-tones and dark tones. I feel like there's just a disconnect, and I noticed a lack of cooler tones versus warmer tones, which was kind of frustrating. The lighter hues are great, it has amazing range, however the darker hues could use some work and I feel like at least 2 more rows could be added on the bottom. Here I have a sketch I did yesterday. I'm going to be using these markers and see how they work together and try to equally use both sets so I can get a good understanding of both. Here's the reference I'm going off of. I've changed a few things off of the original into my sketch. However, I feel like it's a good balance between skin tones and colors. To start, I'm using this light gray marker from the 48 set. I'm just going in and doing those lighter tones on the bird, on its neck and chest. This is really setting the groundwork for me to help understand the lightest versus the darkest tone. I'm using this marker anywhere where it would be white feathers or highlights. Next, I'm going in with this darker gray marker from the 48 set, and I'm just putting in those darker areas and just merging the white feathers into the light gray feathers. I use this marker a lot in this drawing. I feel like it was really versatile and was really easy to build up. I sort of used it as a base layer for everything on the bird because the bird is blue in the reference photo. However, I didn't want it to be too bright, so I wanted to layer those blues onto the gray afterwards and really mute them down. It was a really great muted hue for this, and I felt like it pushed across exactly what I was going for. As you can see, as I'm going into this winged area, I am leaving these spaces open for those highlighted spots on the feathers. This is going to be really useful for later, for when I go over everything with those blues, because instead of these chunky white spots, it's going to look more like the sun is casting highlights. Here I'm going in with this really light yellow color on that star in the middle of the bird's chest. I'm also adding this yellow to some spots on the feathers around the chest to give the effect that this star is glowing. I do also add it to a few spots on the wings just to give some extra depth for later on when I add that blue over top. I'm now going in with a bit brighter yellow just to continue that glowing effect and really make that star pop. I really wanted this to be a focal point of the drawing, so that's why I'm really giving a lot of attention to it. I'm continuing building up brighter and brighter yellows, concentrating it on the edges of the star, thus leaving the center lighter and giving that glowing effect and illuminating vibe. Now I'm going in to add the color into the bird. Again, I'm using those gray tones I was using before and this lighter blue and a bit of a darker blue. I'm now adding that lighter blue to those highlighted areas that I left open earlier, to the wings and some parts on the body of the bird. This is going to allow those highlights to be vibrant and not dull, and really bring out that beautiful blue color of this bird. What I really enjoy about these markers is that they blend really easily, leaving a really simple and effortless gradient. I'm now going in with this darker blue. It's a bit more muted and less vibrant than the lighter blue, which I'm using to do the darker areas of the bird. I'm using this blue to layer on top of those areas that need a little bit more depth and color. I'm now going back in with that original darker gray tone and kind of just going over everything again and using it to create more depth and darken those shadows. I'm being very precise where I'm using this color because I don't want to cover up all the work I did before with those blues. So I'm really only using it in specific areas to accentuate and to bring out the depth between each feather. I'm now moving on to the hands since I've finished the bird, and I'm focusing mostly on that 36 skin tone set. I'm using a mix between 4 or 5 different colors and making sure I have a good range between neutral, warm, and cool tones. So first I'm starting with a lighter neutral color and using it as a base to layer the other skin tones on top of after. So as you can see, I'm just filling in the entire section of the hands with this color. I'm now bringing in those other skin tones to add on top. I'm first starting out with this really light grayish tone and just mapping in where those shadows will be. I'm then going in with a bit of a darker gray tone and just deepening up those areas. And then I blend it all out with that original base color to make sure that there's a nice and smooth transition. Here I'm using a very light warmer or yellow tone to do those highlights and bright parts of the fingers. I then just repeat these steps on all of the fingers and the hands and just following my reference photo. I was definitely struggling a little bit with the skin in this drawing, and although I think it looks relatively good, I definitely was getting a bit frustrated. I was just having a really hard time getting those shadows really dark and deep like I usually like them to be. And so later on off camera, I do end up going in with a much darker color to deepen in those shadows, and I think it turned out much better than how I had it here. I was just getting a bit frustrated, I think, because I thought I was using dark enough colors when using the lighter half of the skin tone set. However, when I was layering the colors I had on top of each other, they were lifting and making those shadow areas lighter than I wanted them to be. I kept trying to go back over and darken those areas, as you can see here, but it just wasn't working in my favor and wasn't going dark enough as I liked. And so that's why I ended up going back later and using a much darker color in the set and making those shadows much deeper. I ended up having to use, I think, the fourth darkest color in this set to do those shadows, which is a bit concerning, since if I were to be doing a drawing with darker skin tone, I feel like I would have struggled even more trying to get those shadows because there is such a lack of darker tones in this set. So like I said before at the beginning of the video, I definitely think this skin tone set could definitely be enhanced by adding a lot more of those darker tones. Overall, I really liked these markers and felt like they were very easy to use. There were a few spots in my drawing that picked up here and here where I thought was a bit concerning, but maybe that's user issue. I had so much fun doing this drawing and using these new markers. Thank you so much for watching me test them out, and see you guys next time.